Four people are sitting around a table talking about baseball, whatever you like. 5 minutes of it, very dull. Suddenly, a bomb goes off, blows the people to smithereens. What do the audience have? 10 seconds of shock. Now take the same scene and tell the audience there is a bomb under that table and will go off in 5 minutes. Well, the whole emotion of the audience is totally different because you've given them that information that in 5 minutes' time that bomb will go off. Now the conversation about baseball becomes very vital because they're saying to you, don't be ridiculous, stop talking about baseball, there's a bomb under there. You've got the audience working.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it, or you can help me to stop it.
More fancy talk. Doctor, do you know what Haddonfield is? Families, children, all lined up in rows up and down these streets. You're telling me they're lined up for a slaughterhouse?
They could be.
Halloween Kills is basically Loomis' worst nightmare coming to fruition. Hitchcock once said, and I'm paraphrasing, when you give the audience more information than the characters they are watching, they're bound to lose their shit and start calling their characters on screen everything but children of God.
I'm gonna wait for him.
I still think I should notify the radio and television.
No. If you do that, they'll see him on every street corner. They'll look for him in every house. Just tell your men to keep their mouths shut and their eyes open.
Eyes open. Contrary to what some believe, this is exactly how suspense is built. So when you hear somebody say, oh, such and such movie has no suspense, it's usually after they unknowingly describe the suspense that's present. Take Rob Zombie's Halloween, for example. Throughout the third act, we see that Michael isn't trying to kill Laurie. Laurie, however, can't and doesn't know that. This difference in information keeps us, the audience, frustrated with Laurie's actions not fitting what we think should be done. In contrast with 78, you're frustrated that Laurie throws away the knife constantly because you've seen Michael in ways Laurie hasn't.
It was nice
in my life, let me just say this to you. In my life, I have a few things people have said to me. And one of the biggest things people have said to me is, why'd you throw away the knife?
Because you think you've killed him.
I understand. But you know what? There would be no movie if he didn't have the knife at that point.
That's correct.
So that's ultimately the answer.
Of course you want her to hurry up and move because you see Michael get up again and you hear the stinger. She doesn't. See, you know what Loomis has said all day to us and the sheriff about Michael. Laurie isn't privy to any of that. This is the essence of tension and suspense. Conflict between characters that's a product of unbalanced information. If you're not upset with the characters' decisions, which is normal, then the filmmakers aren't doing their job. Enter Halloween Kills, a masterclass in dramatic irony.
Dude, her grandmother was almost fucking murdered.
And she escaped, and they caught him, and now he's incarcerated. I'm just saying, like, by today's standards.
Just shut the fuck up, Dave. Shut up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, shut up, Dave.
Right away, we build from the theme of 2018 that answers the questions posed by Dave. Is a man with a knife still a threat today? Well, Haddonfield and Dave learned the hard way. The answer is yes. But why? See, this is just the brilliance on behalf of David Gordon Green, John Carpenter and company for building on it in a way that Michael still remains unknowable. The why here isn't some cult or nonsensical familicidal angle. It's a full circle moment from Carpenter himself. The scariest monster among us is one of us. Michael was underestimated. From the opening of 78 till Loomis empties his revolver on him, there's been this doubt that he could be dangerous as he is.
You don't know what death is.
I've lived here my whole life. This was a safe place, and now it's not anymore.
Now, we have a new generation of Haddonfield residents. A small town where barely anything ever happens. Michael has been locked away for 4 decades. He isn't a big deal to those folks. Sure, he's haunted the families of his victims of 40 years prior, but the youth have grown up, moved on. He's but a story, a legend, an old evil guy behind bars that's gonna die there.
That's the idea.
But a rude awakening changes this dynamic almost at the drop of a dime. Haddonfield residents begin to come home and find loved ones horribly murdered. Those grisly scenes put them in Lori's shoes back in 78. To find your wife or daughter brutally murdered at her window or swimming in her own blood at your dinner table, then to hear the news on the radio and television, 30 plus bodies, 30 plus families, all traumatized simultaneously. This is something the older films just glossed over. We never get to find out how Brady's parents held up. The closest we got was Halloween 4, which Kills lifted this subplot, transformed it to their main plot.
How many people killed back then? How many kids?
Al here lost his boy 10 years back.
Well, not this time, Ben. I'll handle this my own way. We're gonna fry his ass.
Oh, no, Sheriff, we will not calm down. We have watched your department fail. Fail tonight!
Son of a bitch, you just created a lynch mob.
You haven't got a police force. These men may be the only defense you've got.
This isn't about Lori. This isn't the latest episode of The Strodes. No, this is a true 3-part story that shuffles its character focus. That chessboard in 2018, not just for aesthetic purposes. Every piece has a part to play and a time to move. 2018 was like The Invitation, where at the end, the characters think they won. Kills is the part where they go outside and realize the other red lamps going off and they hear the screams. The focus here isn't supposed to be Lori. The micro has been exposed now, it's time for macro.
So in a weird way, she has become the new Loomis character because Loomis was the one who understood that he needed to be stopped because he was pure evil.
As the Loomis role, her job isn't what it was in the earlier timelines as victim. Oh no, she's the hunter. She's the Van Helsing now to Michael's Dracula. The parallel isn't by accident. Loomis went on a panic and got Ben Tramer killed. Loomis formed a mob of drunks and civilians to go after Michael, which got Ted Hollister and the mob themselves killed.
I seen his face. Right there, Al.
He's in the backseat of my car. I saw him when I went to go get in.
Shit, Earl. It's Ted Hollister.
Not him, Tommy. He's always worn a mask. How do we know it's not him?
You dumb son of a bitch. You said you saw Myers.
You took my daughter to chase a killer, and an innocent man is dead.
I know there are some fans who have a conspiracy theory that this is some shoehorn social commentary, but that's bullshit. It's literally a thing that's been used multiple times in the franchise. Only difference is Laurie and Tommy caused it instead of Loomis. Also, this time, the victim was made a full, fleshed out character. Again, lending to the point. We're getting to see the fallout of Michael's massacre, not just the actions. It's not preaching, it's just natural progression in storytelling. The main focus here, though, is the gaps in information.
Look at this.
It's a hospital gown. State issue.
The people who know that Michael is wearing overalls and his old mask are either dead or not part of the mob.
You've come home.
Watch out! Watch out!
There's also two branches of the mob, to be clear. The 78 victims and the 2018 victims. The 78 victims influenced the 2018 victims in a negative manner that actually hurts more than it helps. Laurie is so preoccupied with herself, she can't see what's really going on and the problem that she's escalating by sending Tommy out there for street justice.
What do? We don't have the police support.
We fight. We always fight. Go! Find him, Tommy!
She doesn't know he killed 11 firefighters, or how he even got out for that matter. We watched it. She was on the back of the truck, headed over yonder to the hospital. But Tommy isn't thinking any clearer than she is. But that's the point. Sartain saw this night coming. While people are whipping themselves into a frenzy thinking it's all about them, the reality of the situation becomes unmanageable for all of them. After all, having the cops in a town that's understaffed concentrate their efforts on a dummy mission frees the Shape to do what he's actually up to doing, which isn't heading to the hospital, because he doesn't give a fuck about Laurie, despite what she thinks. And some of the audience. See what I did there?
But he's coming here. She's not supposed to be
He's
with
coming
them.
here. How do you know that?
See, everybody thinks they got Michael figured out, and not a single one of them are even close. The dramatic irony begins to work on the audience from the opening scene, though. We know full well why Laurie doesn't want the firemen to put out the house. Although she believes she killed him, she wants those memories to burn with him and the house. But we know what's going on while she's sleeping at Haddonfield Memorial. The firemen have no clue, nor do they know their efforts will be in vain. They're afraid, but they fight, whereas us in the theater seats would have ran before he cleared the porch, holding that Holligan bar. And tell me I'm lying. See, it's easy to be snarky and say, well, I wouldn't have went down there to begin with. But in reality, that's only because you've seen that Michael was down there. As a firefighter, as one of those characters, you wouldn't know that, so yes, you would do your job and most likely die with your squad on that lawn. We all love to think we wouldn't make any of these stupid mistakes if we was there, but that's just it. It's only stupid if you have the information to avoid the situation. Sandra and her husband, have no clue Michael is out. They're home enjoying themselves, not watching TV, not up on the breaking news. Let me give you an example. It's like Chris Rock slap. Me, my wife, and kids, we were up binge watching some horror flicks, and while the internet was buzzing about it in real time, we had no clue. That's just real life. Everybody isn't tied into the same frequency at the same time. Now, had Michael took another path that night, Sandra and Phil might have awakened to the news in the morning of the massacre like the rest of Haddonfield. Remember, it's established in the original movie that this is a small, nearly uneventful town. This means the police are naturally unprepared and inexperienced, just like the town's people in general. They have no reason to have a gun in every home. There's no protocol for a slaughterhouse. There's also no information to go on. If speculation substitutes for it and informs the character's motivations and actions.
He killed Dad. Michael Myers has haunted this town for 40 years. Tonight we hunt him down.
We see Allison isn't thinking clearly. She's rageful, wants vengeance for her dad and friends. She tells the cops it was Sartain, but she keeps it from her mother. With Karen not knowing that part of the story, she becomes part of the problem by demanding the police focus their efforts protecting her family in the hospital, under the false assumption Michael is headed there after Lori.
Our phone and power lines are down, and we have a killer running loose in the street. Michael Myers.
Is this some kind of Halloween prank?
This is no joke. We need those troopers, and we need them now.
All right, I'll get the troopers right away. Hang on, I'll need some information.
Not going anywhere, Mr. Butte.
Requested backup officers and medical staff from Russellville and Eaton County for support, but no confirmation. We can't handle this scope of crime.
Tommy even questions this notion for a second, but he yet again decides to take somebody's word and acts accordingly. Tommy's whole ordeal is fueled by misinformation, intoxication, and fear. First, we see he's visibly beyond drunk by the time the news of Michael breaks. Then we notice the pattern of him acting on misinformation. First is Vanessa, who was also inebriated, high-strung, and afraid. He never sees who was in the car, but we see him clear as day. He also never sees Tavalli at the hospital. He hears random people assume and begin to claim it's him. These people see an escaped mental patient in a sanitarium uniform. They have no idea Michael is dressed up for trick-or-treating.
Tommy!
What's happening? I don't know.
Who is it?
Lori, only after being told by Tommy, tried to join the mob. This, of course, until she, along with Karen, lays eyes on Tavalli. But Tommy's intoxicated rage, fueled by anger and attempts to hide his fear, pushes him over the edge to the point of attacking police officers and inciting the mob to escalate beyond repair. The first glimpse was his poem at the open mic earlier that night. It's clear he was only confident on paper. His poetry was a front, one he never thought would end up being exposed only minutes later. We can see he is scared shitless outside the bar. After all that talk on stage, little did he know the walk was coming. As Marion, Vanessa, and the group looked on, a terrified Tommy tried to play brave, foreshadowing his inevitable face-to-face with fear itself. In fairness, Tommy hadn't had time to sit and talk with Lori either, so even he doesn't know Michael was back out in his classic outfit. But he still acted on secondhand information and never actually laid eyes on his target until it was too late. Enter Big John and Little John. Like Sandra and Phil, they're celebrating Halloween in their own way, not clued into the massacre in progress. They're also fried out of their fucking minds by the time Michael arrives. The biggest kick in the gut to the audience, though, has to be Karen's death Yes, her death was foreshadowed a few times in the film, but they did a good job of making you kinda forget before bringing it back. In the OG's opening, we see Michael enter the house from the back. After fleeing from Lonnie just before the cops arrive, Michael enters the house again from the back. The officers would have seen him enter otherwise. After Big John and Little John are pranked, Michael plays on the doors with them, and again, he enters the house from the back.
Did you lock the back door?
Big John? Someone's in our house. And it's not a child.
We realize Michael is never seen entering the Myers house through the front door. So although he exits from the front after killing Judith, fleeing from Hawkins and going after Karen, he never enters that way. So when he returns after finishing off Tommy, how do we think he got in the house without the people left out front seeing him get in? I don't think he locked the back door after killing the Johns. Now, why did Karen go up there anyway? 2 reasons. Number 1, unlike us, the audience, she thinks Michael is kaput, dead Slasherville, shakenomore.com.
My daughter was killed, so I wasn't there to put a bullet in his brain like we should have. This is no time for prudence.
There's no way that after his talk, Brackett would take too long to fire his gun and give Michael time to recover and do his thing. There's no way that would happen. I get that he dreamed of that moment for 40 years, but that's not the time to savor it. You stare at that motherfucker's brain after you blow it out the skull, not a second before. Anyway, reason number 2. At the hospital, Hawkins tells her and Lori the story McCabe told him earlier about how Michael as a kid would just stare out that window.
Maybe he wasn't looking out. Maybe he was looking in. At his reflection. At himself.
Like McCabe, who imagined what Michael was thinking, Karen went to stand there and try to imagine the same. Moments earlier, while waiting as Allison was having her wounds treated, she looks up at the window and imagined a young Michael standing there. There's also another element at play here in Halloween Kills. The reality of Michael versus the legend of Michael. Starting with Lori herself. In the '78 film, she told Tommy there was no such thing as the boogeyman. By the end of the night, though, she had come to believe not only was there a such thing, but she just met him. This is the Lori that lacks knowledge of how he escaped, which was anything but paranormal. So she concludes that it's the boogeyman. That's explanation enough for her. The stories elsewhere are being exaggerated, and since nobody but the audience can refute those claims, the stories retold like a game of telephone begin to make Michael larger than life in the minds of the townspeople. The more he kills, the more he transcends. Lori figures this out along with Hawkins in the hospital as they are forced to reevaluate their actions up to that point.
If we only knew then what we know now.
Michael became the boogeyman in her mind that night in '78, so it didn't matter if he was really human or not. Your beliefs influence your actions. Hawkins believed it as well, and it's haunted him for decades. He just figured it out before Lori did, thanks to Dr. Sartain letting him go. Which, by the way, was a nice inverse of the common incidents of Loomis being blamed for letting him out in the earlier sequels.
You let him out.
I didn't.
His own goddamn doctor.
I didn't let him out.
Damn you.
Sorry.
What have you done?
I haven't done anything.
You let him out!
I didn't let him out. I gave orders for him to be restrained.
Yet here in 2018, it's actually the doctor this time that does let him out, and nobody blames him until it's too late. But it doesn't matter how he escaped. It doesn't matter how he got out of the fire. The exaggerated stories are already out. Imagine what the EMTs told their families and friends after they found Dave's body stuck to that wall. By the end of the night, Tommy and about a dozen people are slaughtered. But I'll bet my last 2 pennies, by the morning November 1st, 2018, people will be swearing it was 50 people. It was 11 firefighters, but the legend will be it was 30 firefighters. As Laurie says in her monologue, this is the true curse of Michael Myers. He's not getting physically stronger from killing. No, that's not what Laurie is saying. It's the fear in the fact your beliefs inform your actions. Tommy is fighting a losing battle. He's in denial up until the very end. It's not just his fear, but his reason for it. He really believes all his life Michael is the boogeyman. If Laurie Groff was stunned as a 17-year-old, Tommy was certainly more so. But his belief that Michael is the boogeyman was a self-fulfilling prophecy. He believed that you can't kill the boogeyman.
Killed him. You can't kill the boogeyman.
So when Brackett fumbles, instead of doubling down and finishing off Michael, we see the remaining mob members and Tommy himself fully succumb to that fear he mentioned earlier at the worst possible moment. Tommy freezes as Michael chooses fight over flight and cuts his way through the group. When you believe there's no way you're going to win at something, you've programmed yourself to make sure you lose. Michael knew he was on the verge of death, but in Tommy's mind, it was fighting the inevitable. He wore the look of defeat instead of determination, finally revealing his true face as Michael removes the mask with old Huckleberry. Good old misinformation among the characters is what it's all about, though. That and keeping us just ahead of the characters far as the actual facts of what's going on. Even the little things like Lonnie knocking before he enters the Myers house. Why does it piss us off? Well, because we know Michael not only is in there, he's killed the new owners, and Lonnie is advertising his presence. Thing is, there is actually new owners. His hunch that Michael is headed home doesn't mean he's sure Michael has already arrived. He doesn't just want to walk into somebody's house unannounced like that. Got a little bit of manners. Though he brought his son to... Never mind.
You fucking dummy. You brought your kid to the belly of the beast.
Dad, no.
We want Lonnie to at least try and sneak up on the shape. That's what we would do if we showed up to the Myers house. I don't know about you, I wouldn't show up to the Myers house. But anyway, we know the Johns are already dead. At the end of the day, dramatic irony is the glue that holds slasher flicks together. You can't get upset with the characters on screen. They know everything you know. Because then they would behave like we would and there would be no movie. The firemen would have walked off the job in protest. And even if Michael somehow still got out, Sandra and Phil would have just ran for the car and hauled ass out of there after Michael threw the drone. In fact, they might have already evacuated. Same with Big and Little John. Being realtors, I'm sure they could have found another place to stay at least for the night. The list goes on, it always has. The true situation of a stupid character or decision is when the character actually either has the same amount or more information than the audience has, yet then makes a decision that's counterproductive to having that information. You dig me? The masterful part of Halloween Kills isn't that it reiterates and develops the common franchise theme of rogue protagonists getting innocent people killed in the quest to kill Michael, but that it advances the story without changing Michael's personal MO. He's not out rampaging the town, hyped out over almost being burned alive. The body count is only so high because groups of people are constantly after him. He can't stalk and hide in plain sight as before, not because he changed, but because the people and their methods have changed. The shape is now on defense. In the middle of being his trickster self, he's interrupted by a truck full of shape hunters. He's just killed one of the trick-or-treaters, Dennis, and was presumably returning to pick off the other two in similar fashion. He's not looking for all this smoke. But he ain't ducking it either. Normally in the franchise, it's been Loomis and the police on the hunt, while the rest of the townspeople are largely invisible on Halloween night. But this David Gordon Green spearheaded and John Carpenter overseeing Halloween trilogy has been heavy on details, and the townspeople getting involved was a fitting backdrop, seeing as how it was Brackett's suggestion to alert the people rather than hunt for him under the radar like Loomis suggested instead. Me personally, I think Loomis had the right idea. Now I know there's this thing among some fans about Michael and a high body count, usually pointing to the 78 film. But that's not a period, it's a comma. Michael was interrupted. He was already escalating. He went from 1 kill early hours to 3 kills basically back to back and was attempting a 4th. Sorry to break it to those fans, but his body count isn't a part of his mythos or temperament. It's just how things played out in the original movie. I mean, let's say he succeeded in killing Laurie in the house. Do we didn't think he was going to just go home and sit in the room and finish snacking on the dog?
What is that? It's a dog. It's still warm. He got hungry.
Or do we really, in the back of our minds, understand he would have probably killed Loomis shortly after Laurie, then went on to killing more people randomly until he was captured or killed himself? Not killed himself, but, until he was killed. Anyway, even if we included H2 to still be canon in this timeline, let's say he killed Laurie in the hospital. What does he do then? Just go back home and see if any of the dog is left? It's a dead-end story. It may have taken 40 years, but they finally figured out that although Halloween 78 didn't need to continue the story, but if you're going to continue it, you don't need to develop Michael and or demystify him. You can push the story forward by developing the characters who take center stage, while Michael does his job and lurks in the background.
Michael Myers murdered 5 people. And he's a human being we need to understand.
He's not a character to understand. We know this as the audience. The people in the story, however, don't know this, and it's one thing we all know as humans. Tragedy without closure is maddening. Not just if you're Laurie Strode, but if you're Tommy Doyle, if you're Lonnie Elam, if you're Marion Chambers. Sometimes when we don't have answers, we make up answers to feel better. This is what Laurie did for 40 years. But we learned this as the audience before she gets a chance to. This is why she blames herself for the riot and what ultimately gets Ray and her daughter killed.
Michael's a masterpiece. He created this chaos, but I'm the one that brought it all onto Haddonfield.
But that's the brutal truth about dramatic irony. Hindsight is a bitch.
He waited for this night. He's waited for me. I've waited for him. Come on, Michael.
See, the secret to Halloween Ends was hidden in plain sight here in Kills. There's no explanation for Michael. So everyone around him has made up their own hypothesis, and this error leads them all to failure.
Michael's pursuit of Laurie Strode could be what keeps him alive. I would suspect the notion of being a predator or the fear of becoming prey keeps both of them alive.
Sartain was convinced Loomis was wrong, and there just had to be a motive, a reason. He went through unethical means to try and prove his model was correct. The answer was no. Laurie needed a wake-up call. She needed to know that she wasn't Michael's only victim that night, who still suffers.
Let me find him then. He's after me.
No, he's not. It was the doctor that took him to your house tonight. It wasn't Michael. It's not about you.
a lesson learned way too late. Hawkins thought he was just a tortured soul that deserved a shot at redemption.
In that moment, all I could think was that inside that monster there was somebody's baby boy. Purely and simply evil.
Took 40 years to realize there was nothing to save.
But now I know. There's nothing inside that man but pure evil.
Allison thought he was out for revenge. None of these things turned out to be true concerning Michael. If it wasn't Laurie that day in '78, it would have been someone else. Even if there was a rhyme or a reason, the only one who knows what that is ain't doing interviews. But this is what moves the plot forward, not by creating increasingly convoluted lore for Michael, but by letting the characters' conflict drive the narrative.
He needs to die. And I'm the one that's gonna get him.
I just want you to know, when he gets here, I'm gonna fucking kill him. Because 40 years ago, when I was a kid, you protected me. So tonight, I'm gonna protect you. Okay?
Michael.
I'm going with them. We're gonna hunt him down and we're gonna put an end to this. Couldn't let you have all the fun.
So many victims in our neighborhood.
Close friends of ours and we just want to help out.
It needs to die.
And I'm the one that needs to kill it.
Everybody got a reason why it needs to be them to take down Michael. This origin lies in Loomis himself, who after Michael escaped, didn't deem it sufficient to alert the authorities, but rather traveled there himself, armed with some fire, with intent to kill rather than apprehend. This is echoed in the Kills flashback when Hawkins sees that bloodthirsty look in Loomis' eyes.
I saw the look in Loomis's eyes. All he wanted was more blood, more death.
They all have a reason why it should be them to banish the evil. This is what the second act of the story is setting up for the conclusion of ends. With both films being written at the same time, it becomes clear that Laurie didn't learn this new information in Kills for a superficial purpose, but that it was laying the groundwork for her arc we later see in the finale. Bonus footage. Kills also has a few goodies for us. There's the 12 pumpkins in the intro, representing the 12 installments in the franchise up until that point. There's the Halloween 2 Loomis Easter egg that Marion creates.
This is for Dr. Loomis.
Then there's the staging. Michael has always staged his victims' bodies to terrify those who discover them. But for the first time in franchise history, we actually get to see Michael in the act of staging a body. Last but not least, there's the homage to Psycho with Karen's death. If you think I left out any examples of dramatic irony in this movie, leave them down in the comments. If you love Halloween or horror in general, don't forget to like and subscribe, because I got a lot more coming your way. And you don't want to miss this like Christmas and end up giftless. This is Max Spielberg, CEO of Million Media, and I'm screaming at you fine folks later.